Good morning, everyone. We're going to try to do this recording again because the last one didn't work. Only 20 seconds posted. Oh. So this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and we're here for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. We've had a couple of, almost 2 weeks off because I've been so busy in the mornings, but I'm here now for 3 weeks, and I think I have at least 2 or 3 mornings a week when I can do this. Hi again, Neely. So we're going to talk about diet and behavior today. Hi, Danny again. I hope this recording works. I don't have a little red flag on the phone this morning, so hopefully this one's working. It is weird that in my neighborhood I often have no internet connection between 9:15 and 9. I don't know why. None of my neighbors are home. It's not like they're doing anything. Anyway, so let's talk about behavior and diet. One of the things that people bring their dogs to me the most for is behavior. And often the first thing I want to know is, what are you feeding your dog? Because in fact, diet can have a huge impact on behavior. And think about us, if you have a little kid and you take him to the carnival and he's eating cotton candy and chocolate and popcorn and no real food and no vegetables that day, what's that little kid going to be doing? He's going to be running around like a maniac, and then he's going to collapse and he's going to sleep, and it's going to be bad when he wakes up because he's going to be needing real food. So that's kind of what happens to our dogs when we don't feed them appropriately. And one of the things that happens when you're fed, like if this is a red Corgi, if I feed him chicken kibble from a low quality for months and years on end in a bowl with no water, I'm going to create a whole system of inflammation in his body. So what is inflammation? It is in fact a normal part of your body's function. It's an attempt to raise the temperature in your body for your body to kill any invading bacteria or viruses, or at least make your body an inhospitable place for them. That's why you get a fever when you have a cold or a virus or a flu. We try to lower the fever, but the fever is in fact trying to, it's our body's response to try to kill the viruses and the bacteria that may be taking over our bodies. So when you are in a state of inflammation over a long period of time, you can develop autoimmune problems, which is when your inflammatory system starts to attack your body, your own body, and it starts to treat your body as if your body is the invader. And so we talk a lot about arthritis, and that's something people understand. And people say as they age, oh, I have arthritis. But what is arthritis really? It's inflammation in the joints. And is that necessarily part of aging? No, not necessarily. What that inflammation is coming from is long-term inflammation in your body, often from your diet. And that's why I take a bunch of supplements to create a non-inflammatory response in my body. And I really watch what I eat. I think we can't afford to not eat organic food in the world today as much as we possibly can, because all of those chemicals in the food and in our dog's food create inflammation. And what happens when you have long-term inflammation? I have a client now, a dog who developed blindness, basically, and it's a bit controversial with her diagnosis how this came about, but I believe strongly that it is from a poor diet. And she was, in fact, fed a chicken-based diet, even though she is a black and tan, for a long time. And she's only 5. She developed Cushing's disease. It led to blindness. She had tremendous digestive problems, and she was very unhappy and whining, and has had several problems that have been all an offshoot from this. So immediately, and too bad the person didn't come to me 6 months prior, because we could have really made this dog's life better. That person has gone to a lot of trouble. It's one little dog. She weighs probably 10 pounds. So she has just changed her diet completely. She feeds her, in Chinese medicine terms, all cold foods. They love seafood in that family, so she gets a lot of cold water fish. She eats a lot of duck, which they grill for her, and she even gets rabbit sometimes and turkey instead of chicken, and she eats no more kibble. So finally, she's at a point where her body doesn't look like she has Cushing's anymore. She's lost the pot belly. Her coat's not dry. She sheds out normally, and her whole expression is brighter, and she's much happier. Which brings me to another thing. I don't know what order I talked about this last time, but I have another friend or two and a client or two who have dogs that are constantly food seeking. Now, these dogs are often fed, again, a low quality kibble with no water on it. And so they're not getting the nutrients they need. And they are dehydrated and they're constantly looking for something moist to eat. So if you're eating a hamburger, they want it. If you're eating a juicy steak, they want it. And some of them are at the point where they'll seek any food that you're eating because they are so desperate. And sometimes, in some cases, this kind of behavior can lead to eating other dogs' poop or cat poop out of the box, which is not good because the drying agents in the cat litter, first of all, they're chemically, but second of all, they'll dehydrate the poor dog even more. So, in that case, the inflammation is driving that behavior for that dog to be constantly food seeking. And that, again, is not pleasant to live with. You can put up with it but if your dog is table height and you have children, that's not going to be an easy thing to manage in your household. Having a Corgi that's looking for food means that you'll be tripping on him, but it's not as annoying as when the Labrador cleans the entire plate of the child. So, in that case, again, you can't afford to keep feeding them poor quality food. In terms of Chinese medicine, of course, we can look at inflammation coming from having a hot dog like my little orange guy here. He's a hot dog in terms of Chinese medicine, and he's also a fire dog in terms of the 5 elements, so he's a really hot kid. And it's just like a forest fire in California. You throw more fire in the fire and it burns, and you get a bigger fire that you now can't control, which is what happened to that other dog that's had Cushing's and blindness as a result of what she was eating. And then other systemic factors that fed into her autoimmune disease. So what do I do instead for a dog like mine? I have to feed him cold foods in terms of Chinese medicine. He eats turkey most of the time. Turkey is neutral. It's not cold enough for this very hot dog in the summer. And he has been going out of his way to eat duck ever since I gave him duck breast in June. He has been eating just craving duck treats and anything that's cold. He even has been interested in some of my friends' cold water fish dinners that I'm not eating because I don't eat seafood. So he has really shown me the importance of feeding a dog something to keep him in balance. So he is eating nearly all duck now in his meals with just some turkey burger on top. But he really needs it's been like 88, 90 degrees here for a month, and it will continue to be for another month. And he will continue to need cold food to keep him in balance. And when we talk about balance in dogs, we look at their physical balance, like how he's standing now. He's not leaning back or leaning forward. He's very balanced. But we also talk about systemic balance. The organs in his body are balanced because he is eating a cold food to keep the inflammation down in his body. And that all leads to emotional balance. And that really is the root of behavior's relationship to food. If you have a dog with inflammation in his body, then his behavior is not going to be good because he's got inflammation in his brain. All of the processes that go on in the brain in terms of firing the muscles and triggering the neurotransmitters in the brain are all going to be not working optimally, and you end up with cranial nerve problems. I've seen horses that end up with trigeminal neuralgia. I've seen this in dogs too, and cats. So it really matters what you feed them in terms of their behavior. And I have a dachshund friend I work with, which I've mentioned many times. He has tremendous bowel problems. He has like dog Crohn's disease. He has irritable bowel. He has a sensitive gut. He may have had ulcers on periods of time. And what's his behavior like? He is a snarky little dog. And his people have always fed him pretty well, but he had so many issues going on, and he's a dappled dachshund. The other important thing to notice is changes in your dog's color over his lifetime. So he's getting grayer as he's getting older, and they have two of them, two dappled dachshunds, and one is a cold dog and one is a hot dog. And so this poor guy with the gut problems has been a hot dog, and so they're feeding him cold food. Right now he's eating rabbit, and my gosh, his temperament, he's 13, he is a very even-tempered dog now. He's not so barky on the leash. He is getting along with my dog way better, which is a good thing. Actually, they've been friends a long time, but now they're like truly happy to see each other. So his behavior for many years, even though his people were feeding him responsibly, was because he was still out of balance. And, he saw my sister maybe 4 years ago. And since then, he has been getting progressively better in his behavior. And his brother, meanwhile, was always a bit of a cold dog, so they had to heat him up. But now that he's 13, he's starting to need to be more, he's getting hotter himself, so they need to feed him cold food as well. So that's good, because now they're only cooking or preparing rabbit and duck and turkey and not having to do like a whole other diet for the other dog. So really be aware, especially if you have any of these dappley kinds of dogs that do change color over their lifetime. But even, for instance, if you have a black dog who has been eating hot food, as they age, part of aging is a growing inflammatory process in the body just from overuse and not adequate rest in between and things like that. So he may indeed need to have a diet switch when he is 12, 13, 10 years old, depending on the type of dog. And I've seen this even in a dog like a black lab, which is a classic kind of cold dog, that they start to get hot as they get old, and you need to cool them down more. So, and this is true, this relationship between food and behavior. This is true in Chinese medicine, in Ayurvedic medicine, and, you know, God willing, one day we will recognize this in Western medicine. But the behavior is intimately related to what you eat. And if you've seen that Michael Moore film where he eats only McDonald's hamburgers for a month, and he gains a lot of weight, and he's very unhappy, and he gets irritable and grumpy, you can see in that film really clearly the problems that food can cause for your behavior. And we've seen this with children. You know, you give them Hershey bars, cotton candy, popcorn, maybe a hot dog, maybe even, if you're at the fair, fried butter. And how is that kid feeling at the end of the day? First of all, he's running around, he's not listening to you, and then he crashes and sleeps like a rock and then wakes up cranky and grumpy. So the same thing happens to our dogs. And if we do this on a repeated basis, your dog ends up not being very healthy and having behavior issues. And I can see with Tristan, he's really chosen to eat more duck this summer. He won't even eat chicken-based treats at all anymore. He will only eat duck treats. And so when I bring him down to dog school to do agility and things, I can see that his focus is just great, and he is able to do the jumps. He doesn't ever miss any, and he is able to pay attention to what I'm asking him to do. His behavior with other dogs has even improved. He's never been great with other dogs for a few years, but the more duck he eats, the more chill he is, literally, with other dogs. So behavior and food really are intimately related, and I can see it with my own dog and with my client dogs. And look at your own dogs and see what you're feeding them, and if that may be impacting their behavior, if you have behavior issues with your dogs. So for instance, if you have a basset hound and he's pretty lazy and not too interested in things, he might be a dog who can actually have chicken to wake him up a little bit and give him a little fire to get him moving, depending on his coloring and his other aspects that might have to do with whether he's hot or cold in Chinese medicine. So think about this when you are buying your food for your dogs. Cooking food for your dogs can be a much better thing. Processed foods that are normal for kids now, yes, this is a huge problem for children and our pets. Processed foods. Still there? There. This is like the hardest day. If I have to do this a third time. All right, so when I think back to my lunchbox when I was a kid, I had a bologna sandwich, cheese doodles, and a Twinkie. I don't know how I lived long enough to be this age eating that. Talk about processed foods. But my parents were both working. My mom was going to school when she wasn't at work, and we didn't know how bad these foods were then. They tasted good, so they were good. But boy, talk about creating inflammation. I mean, that's not a good thing to have been feeding a kid. But it all worked out in the long run because my sister and I both eat far better food now, as does my mother. And that brings me up to one last point about this. My mom, you know, she's eaten this food forever. She's 82. And a lot of what happens when you eat depends on your belief system. So if you truly believe that organic food is the best food for you and that it's going to help you and that's what you eat, that will help you. My mom does not at all believe that certain foods are bad for her. You know, she thinks if it tastes good, it's okay as long as she doesn't eat too much of it. So she might eat 5 cheese doodles, but not eat 5 more for 5 days. But the long-term effect of that, because of her attitude, is that it's not going to hurt her. So do our dogs have that attitude? I don't know that we can rely on our knowledge of dogs to know whether or not food for them is something they perceive as good or bad, because they really do function more on the instinct of the flavor of the food. But certainly for us, your attitude really can affect the effect of the food on you. But that being said, I would absolutely make sure that I eat the best possible food that I can for me, and feed the best possible food I can for my pets, whatever that may be. So thanks for joining us today for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. This is the second time I've had to do this. Hopefully this one will have all recorded and I can post it. And if you have more questions, you can ask them in the comments. And I probably will do another episode or two at some point soon about food and behavior, because I really think it's an important issue that we need to look at. And, you know, like I said, arthritis is an autoimmune problem in some people and dogs. I think I mentioned this in the last time I did this. I have a friend who has a serious autoimmune problem. What does she have? Gut problems. She has colitis and Crohn's disease. She has a chronic headache that doesn't go away. And she also has chronic arthritis, and she's only in her 40s. And that's because her whole body is in a massive immune response. She has red hair. That's another classic sign of an animal or person living with inflammation. We see this in chestnut mares. And, you know, she needs to eat, in Chinese medicine, cold food to kind of calm down her body. But she doesn't always find that kind of food. And so she has tremendous problems. And I've seen this with dogs, where all the systems of the body are affected by the inflammatory processes in the body over time. So, you know, eat your foods that are antioxidants and anti-inflammatory, like berries, cherries, plenty of other foods. You can look them up, but there are plenty of foods that are anti-inflammatory that are good for you and your pets. So thanks for joining us today for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. Thanks for bearing with me throughout this whole process. And we will be back, I'm not sure when, possibly tomorrow, for another episode. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody have a great day. Biscuit, we need the Corgi music. Cue it up. There we go. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you soon. Missed me. Danny, I hope this one worked. All right, bye-bye, everybody.